Ethan Walker, CEO of Horizon Tech, thought his company was thriving, until a sudden drop in employee morale revealed deep cracks beneath the surface. To find the truth, he takes the ultimate risk, going undercover as a receptionist in his own company. What he uncovers is shocking: a culture of favoritism, bullying, and sabotage, led by a former executive with a personal vendetta. Can Ethan turn things around before it's too late, or will Horizon Tech crumble under the weight of betrayal? Intrigued? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to follow this gripping tale of deception and redemption. Let us know. How would you handle the truth if it shattered everything you believed in? Stay tuned! Ethan Walker sat in his pristine corner office, surrounded by the trappings of success. His desk was a sleek, polished mahogany, flanked by glass shelves lined with awards. The New York City skyline stretched out before him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a symbol of the empire he had built. Usually, the view filled him with pride, but today it left him feeling empty. In his hands, he held the latest employee satisfaction report for Horizon Tech, and it was dismal. A 15% drop in satisfaction in the past quarter, and the complaints were mounting. There were whispers of favoritism, bullying, and even racism within the ranks. The numbers didn't make sense. Horizon Tech had always been a place of innovation and growth, a company that had built its reputation on valuing its people. His assistant, Lindsay, knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. "Ethan, you've been staring at that report for an hour. You should get some fresh air." Ethan didn't respond at first. He was too absorbed by the realization that his company, the one he had spent years nurturing, was slipping through his fingers. He finally looked up, his brow furrowed. "How did I not see this coming?" he asked, more to himself than to Lindsay. Lindsay hesitated before responding. "Sometimes when you're at the top, it's hard to see what's happening on the ground." Her words stung, but they were true. Ethan had become increasingly detached from the day-to-day operations of Horizon Tech. Meetings with investors, new product launches, and speaking engagements had pulled him away from the pulse of the company. And now he was paying the price. "We need to address this," Ethan said, his voice firm but laced with frustration. "I can't let this continue." Lindsay nodded. "What's your plan?" Ethan paused. What was his plan? He couldn't solve this from behind his desk. No number of meetings or presentations would give him the insight he needed. He had to get his hands dirty. He needed to see Horizon Tech through the eyes of his employees. "I'm going undercover," Ethan declared, the decision taking shape as he spoke the words. "I need to understand what's really going on in this company." Lindsay blinked in surprise. "Undercover? As in, pretending to be one of the employees?" "Exactly," Ethan replied, standing up. "I'll start at the bottom, as a receptionist. No one will know it's me. I need to see the truth for myself." Going undercover was not an easy decision for Ethan. He was fully aware of the risks. If he were discovered, it could lead to a PR disaster, shattering the trust within the company and making him look foolish in the eyes of the public. But what choice did he have? His business was crumbling from the inside, and he needed answers that no report or feedback session could give him. The next morning, Ethan stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his disguise. He wore a standard-issue receptionist's uniform, a pale blue shirt, dark slacks, and black scuffed shoes. A fake mustache sat awkwardly on his upper lip, and thick-framed glasses obscured his sharp, piercing eyes. He looked nothing like the Ethan Walker who commanded boardrooms and secured million-dollar deals. Instead, he looked ordinary. That was the point. A nervous energy filled him as he stepped out of his apartment and made his way to the New York office of Horizon Tech. As he approached the building, his usual entrance through the executive lobby felt foreign. Today, he bypassed the high-security gate, heading instead to the side door, where the support staff and lower-level employees entered. The hum of the city surrounded him, but inside, his mind raced. What would he find inside his own company? Would he recognize the place he had spent years building from the ground up? Or had it already become something unrecognizable? Stepping into the building, Ethan was hit by the stark difference in atmosphere. The energy on the ground floor was nothing like the executive suites he was used to. The buzz of conversations, the tapping of keyboards, and the incessant ringing of phones filled the air. The environment was chaotic, fast-paced, and almost mechanical in nature. But more than anything, it was impersonal. He walked up to the front desk, where he was greeted by Laura Brennan, a seasoned receptionist with years of experience at Horizon Tech. She barely glanced at him as she handed him a schedule for the day. "You're the new guy, right?" she asked without much interest. "Yeah, that's me," Ethan replied, using his new alias, Eric. "Where do I start?" "Start by taking over the phones," she said, pointing to the bustling reception desk. "It's going to be a busy day." Ethan nodded and took his place behind the counter. The weight of the phone felt foreign in his hand, and the calls came in faster than he could process. He fumbled through each one, answering questions and transferring calls as best as he could. Every mistake he made reminded him how out of touch he was with the realities of running the company from the ground level. By mid-morning, Ethan was already feeling the strain of the job. The seemingly simple tasks of answering phones and greeting visitors had turned into a whirlwind of confusion. He had once prided himself on being able to handle high-pressure negotiations and fast-paced decision-making, but this was a different kind of pressure. Laura noticed his struggles and offered a rare smile. "Don't worry, it gets easier after the first week." Ethan smiled back, grateful for the small kindness. "I'll hold you to that." As he settled into the routine, Ethan became more attuned to the office's dynamics. The employees, from customer service reps to IT support, moved about like cogs in a well-oiled machine. Yet, there was something off about the whole operation, something cold and detached. No one smiled, and the interactions between teams felt transactional at best. Ethan overheard snippets of conversation as senior managers passed by the reception desk. One discussion between two department heads caught his attention. "Did you see the new efficiency measures they're rolling out next week?" one manager said with a smirk. "Yeah, just what we need. More work for less pay," the other replied, laughing. "Let HR deal with the complaints. We've got bigger things to worry about." The casual disregard for employee concerns hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He had always envisioned Horizon Tech as a company that valued its employees, but here were his managers treating them like disposable assets. Had he been this blind? Ethan felt a knot forming in his stomach. This was just the first day, and already he could see that the problems ran deeper than he had imagined. As he continued to observe, he noticed something else, an underlying tension that seemed to ripple through the office. Employees avoided eye contact with their managers, speaking in hushed tones when certain people walked by. Rachel Coleman, the senior manager of the New York office, seemed to cast a shadow wherever she went. Ethan had known her as a no-nonsense leader, someone who got results. But as he watched her interactions with her team, he saw something else, an air of superiority and condescension that made him uneasy. "Eric, right?" Rachel said, addressing Ethan at the front desk. "Make sure these documents get to the right people. I don't have time for any more mistakes." Her tone was sharp, and Ethan felt the weight of her words. He nodded, biting back a retort. Rachel turned and walked away, leaving a cloud of tension in her wake. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and hurried tasks. Ethan's muscles ached from standing, and his mind was spinning with all he had learned. As he left the office that evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong at Horizon Tech. The company he thought he knew had transformed into something unrecognizable, and it was up to him to fix it. The next few days deepened Ethan's understanding of the problem. Horizon Tech wasn't just suffering from disorganization or inefficiency, it was rotting from within. The culture of the office had become toxic, and it extended far beyond Rachel's abrasive leadership. He began noticing the small but significant ways in which the employees were demoralized. In the break room, Ethan overheard another conversation, this time between a group of middle managers. "Can you believe HR's latest memo?" one scoffed. "They're trying to push this team-building nonsense again. Like we need more of that." "Yeah, right," another laughed. "As if any of us are actually going to care. Just another way to make us do more work." Their words were laced with cynicism, and it was clear that morale was at an all-time low. Ethan's heart sank. How had it come to this? Had he truly been so out of touch? As the days passed, he found a small comfort in the routines of his receptionist duties. But it was the behavior of the senior managers that disturbed him the most. The casual dismissiveness, the sneering comments about lower-level employees, and the outright bullying all pointed to a deeper issue: a culture of elitism and disregard for those who kept the company running. Ethan realized that this was not just a failure of leadership, it was a failure of his leadership. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan became increasingly attuned to the rhythms and hidden dynamics of the office. One evening, as the office emptied and the clatter of keyboards finally began to die down, Ethan noticed Chloe Reynolds, one of the financial analysts, still at her desk. She had been working tirelessly on the quarterly reports, often staying well past the usual hours. There was something admirable and heartbreaking about her dedication. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered as Chloe's colleague Jennifer passed by, surprised to see her still at work. "Chloe, you're still here?" she asked, her voice incredulous. Chloe gave her a tired smile. "Yeah, just finishing up these reports for the board meeting tomorrow. They need to be perfect." Jennifer hesitated before speaking. "But isn't your daughter's recital tonight? I thought you were going." Chloe's face clouded with regret, but she forced a smile. "I'll make it up to her this weekend." Ethan's heart sank as he listened. Chloe's work ethic was undeniable, but it was clear she was sacrificing far more than just her time. He watched as she pushed her chair back and stretched, the weight of unspoken guilt evident on her face. Chloe wasn't just a dedicated employee. She was someone who was quietly giving up parts of her personal life to meet the company's demands. Demands that he, as CEO, had unknowingly allowed to burden her. Later that night, Ethan found himself reflecting on the sacrifices his employees were making. Chloe wasn't the only one. How many others had missed family events, birthdays, or anniversaries to keep Horizon Tech running? And what had they received in return? From what he had seen, many like Chloe were overlooked, passed over for promotions, or simply ignored by the higher-ups who valued results over well-being. The thought weighed heavily on him, a stark reminder of how disconnected he had become from the real heart of his company. The next day, Ethan's attention shifted to another employee who had quietly caught his notice: Jack Sullivan, an IT specialist. Jack wasn't the most visible member of the team, but his presence was felt everywhere. He was the one people called when their computers crashed or when the network went down. What struck Ethan most about Jack wasn't just his technical skills, but the way he interacted with people. It was late morning when a young intern, Megan, approached Jack in a panic. Her computer had crashed, and with an important presentation due in an hour, she was on the verge of tears. "I don't know what happened," Megan stammered, her face flushed with frustration. "I was working on my presentation, and now everything's gone." Jack gave her a calm, reassuring smile. "Don't worry. We'll figure it out together." Ethan watched as Jack spent the next hour not only fixing Megan's computer, but also teaching her basic troubleshooting skills. By the end of it, Megan's presentation was back, and she was visibly relieved. Jack's patience and kindness had turned a stressful situation into a learning moment. That's not just a job well done, Ethan thought to himself. That's leadership. Despite his talents and his ability to lift the spirits of those around him, Jack remained in a junior role, unnoticed by the higher-ups. Ethan realized that Horizon Tech had a problem recognizing its true leaders. Jack embodied the company values Ethan had once dreamed of: collaboration, kindness, and excellence. Yet, Jack had never been given the chance to rise. How many other employees like Jack were hiding in plain sight? The atmosphere in the office grew heavier with each passing day. Ethan's observations were becoming increasingly troubling, especially when it came to Rachel Coleman, the senior manager. Her interactions with lower-level employees were sharp, her words laced with impatience and cruelty. Rachel's management style seemed to breed fear, not respect. One afternoon, while Ethan was working the front desk, Rachel stormed up to him, her eyes flashing with irritation. "Eric, is this seriously how you're handling things?" she snapped, surveying the messy desk with disdain. Papers everywhere, phones ringing off the hook, and you can't even answer them on time. No wonder this place is falling apart. It's because people like you can't do the basics right. Her words cut deep. Ethan felt a wave of anger rise in his chest. People like you? What did she mean by that? The belittling tone and the arrogance in her words made Ethan's blood boil. For a moment, he wanted to drop the facade, to remind her exactly who she was talking to. But he held his tongue. Rachel's outburst wasn't just directed at him, it was how she treated the staff. And that treatment wasn't just harsh, it was toxic. After she left, Ethan noticed the looks exchanged by the employees nearby. One of them, Henry, an IT worker who had witnessed the scene, shook his head sympathetically. "Don't take it personally," Henry said quietly. "That's just how she acts. We're all used to it by now." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. Rachel's behavior wasn't just a bad day or an isolated incident, it was a pattern. And the fact that employees like Henry were used to it meant the culture at Horizon Tech had been poisoned for a long time. But Rachel wasn't the only problem. She was a symptom of something larger, something Ethan had failed to see while he had been focused on the company's outward success. Ethan's undercover role had revealed much about the toxic culture festering within Horizon Tech, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to discover. It was late in the day when Jack pulled him aside, his usual calm demeanor replaced with quiet urgency. "Eric, there's something I think you should know," Jack began, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I've noticed some strange things happening lately. Employees are being pressured to do things that don't make sense, like sabotaging projects or skipping important steps in quality control. It's almost like they're being blackmailed." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Blackmailed? By who?" "I don't know for sure," Jack replied, his voice lowering. "But I've overheard people talking about personal secrets, things they don't want getting out. Someone's using those secrets against them." Ethan's mind raced. If what Jack was saying was true, this was far more than just a toxic work environment. This was organized sabotage. Someone was deliberately undermining Horizon Tech from within, using personal information to manipulate employees. But who? And why? "I think this goes deeper than anyone realizes," Jack said, his eyes filled with concern. "You should be careful." Ethan thanked Jack, his heart pounding. As he made his way home that evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that his company was under attack, not just from within, but from an outside force. The weight of the realization settled heavily on his shoulders. Someone was trying to destroy Horizon Tech, and it was his responsibility to stop them. Ethan knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed help, someone who could dig deeper into the sabotage, someone with the skills to uncover the truth. The next morning, he made a call to Ryan Hale, a private investigator known for his discretion and sharp instincts. Ryan met Ethan in a quiet cafe away from the office. Dressed in a sharp suit with a no-nonsense attitude, Ryan listened carefully as Ethan laid out everything he had discovered. Rachel's bullying, the toxic culture, Jack's warning about blackmail, and the possible sabotage. "I'll need access to your internal systems, employee records, and anything you can give me on past incidents," Ryan said, his tone professional. "If someone's blackmailing your employees, we'll find out who." As Ryan got to work, Ethan returned to the office with a renewed sense of determination. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. Time was running out, and whoever was behind the sabotage was growing bolder by the day. A week later, Ryan returned with his findings, and what he had uncovered was worse than Ethan had imagined. The person behind the sabotage was none other than Mark Dalton, a former executive who had been let go under suspicious circumstances a year ago. Mark had left Horizon Tech with a grudge, and he had been quietly working behind the scenes to tear the company apart. Using his inside knowledge, he had exploited personal information about key employees, secrets he had gathered during his time in the company, and used it to blackmail them into sabotaging projects, causing delays and undermining Ethan's leadership. But it didn't stop there. Mark had also planted false rumors, manipulated internal documents, and even hired outside help to create a public relations nightmare for Horizon Tech. This is personal for him, Ryan explained. He doesn't just want to hurt the company, he wants to destroy your reputation. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Mark's betrayal stung on a deep level. He had trusted Mark, had once seen him as a valuable member of his executive team. And now, Mark was trying to ruin everything Ethan had worked so hard to build. "This ends now," Ethan said, his voice low but resolute. "I won't let him win." Ethan's thoughts swirled as he processed the revelation that Mark Dalton, a former trusted executive, was behind the sabotage. Betrayal tasted bitter, but as the CEO of Horizon Tech, he knew the battle wasn't over. Mark might be the mastermind, but there was no way he could have orchestrated all this damage alone. Ethan had seen the signs of internal decay: Rachel's bullying, the culture of elitism, and the toxic atmosphere among the senior management. He had to confront his leadership team. The next day, Ethan arrived early at the office, walking past the reception desk where he'd spent so many hours undercover. He hadn't revealed his true identity yet. He needed more information before making his move. As the minutes ticked by, the senior managers arrived one by one for the scheduled executive meeting. Rachel Coleman was the last to arrive, strutting into the room with the same air of superiority that had become her hallmark. Ethan stood at the head of the table watching them with a heavy heart. These were people he had trusted to uphold his vision, to nurture the company he had built from the ground up. And yet the cracks in their leadership had been revealed one by one. This meeting was going to expose everything. He started calmly, addressing the drop in employee satisfaction, the complaints of favoritism, and the toxic work culture that had taken root. Rachel interrupted him. "With all due respect, Ethan, you can't possibly hold us accountable for every disgruntled employee's complaint. We've been doing what we can to keep the company running efficiently." "Efficiently?" Ethan's voice sharpened. "I've been working alongside the employees you dismiss so casually. I've seen the fear and resentment they carry. And it's not just about a few complaints, Rachel. It's about the culture of elitism you and others have fostered." Rachel's face flushed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You've been working alongside. What do you mean?" Ethan glanced around the room. "I've been undercover for the past month." The room fell silent, the shock palpable. Rachel's face went pale, her composure cracking. The other senior managers exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain of how to react. "I've seen the way you treat people, Rachel. The way you talk down to employees like they're beneath you. And you're not the only one. This entire leadership team has failed to create an environment where people feel valued." One of the other managers, Greg, tried to protest. "Ethan, we didn't know you were going undercover. That's what?" Ethan cut in. "Necessary? Because if I hadn't, I never would have seen the truth. And let's not forget Mark Dalton." At the mention of Mark's name, a new tension filled the room. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Ethan's eyes narrowed, focusing on her. "You knew, didn't you?" Ethan accused. "You knew Mark was behind all this." Rachel hesitated, her eyes darting to the side. "I didn't." "Don't lie to me." Ethan's voice was firm, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "You knew, and you let it happen because you thought you could benefit from the chaos. Maybe even take my place once the company collapsed." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's guilt was written all over her face. She had been complicit, allowing Mark to orchestrate his sabotage while turning a blind eye to the damage it was causing. The betrayal stung deeper than Ethan had imagined. "You're suspended," Ethan said quietly, his words laced with finality. "Effective immediately, and don't think for a second that this is the end of it." Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She looked around the room as if searching for support, but found none. With a furious glare, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Ethan turned back to the remaining managers, his voice steady. "If any of you are involved in this, now is your chance to come clean. I won't tolerate any more lies." No one spoke. The tension in the room was thick, but Ethan could see the fear in their eyes. They knew their time was running out. After the meeting, Ethan wasted no time. He called a crisis management session with his legal and HR teams. Mark Dalton had to be stopped, and Rachel's suspension was just the beginning. Ryan Hale, the private investigator, continued gathering evidence to build a legal case against Mark and any others involved in the sabotage. Ethan's first step was damage control. He needed to address the growing concerns within Horizon Tech's workforce, so he called for an all-staff meeting, where he would come clean about his undercover mission and the steps he was taking to fix the deep-seated issues within the company. Standing in front of hundreds of employees, Ethan took a deep breath before addressing them. "I know many of you don't recognize me like this," he began, gesturing to his plain attire, a stark contrast to the suits he usually wore. "But for the past month, I've been working as a receptionist here at Horizon Tech. I did this because I needed to see firsthand what was happening in our company." The room buzzed with murmurs of surprise and disbelief. "And what I saw was not the Horizon Tech I thought I knew," he continued, his voice resolute. "I saw people who are overworked, undervalued, and mistreated by some of our senior managers. That's unacceptable. I take full responsibility for not seeing it sooner." Ethan paused, letting his words sink in. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, a mixture of anger and hope in the room. "There are going to be changes," Ethan said, his voice growing stronger. "Effective immediately, we will be implementing a new system for promotions and performance reviews, one that is based on merit, not favoritism. We will also be introducing a whistleblower program so that anyone can report concerns without fear of retaliation." The room was quiet now, listening intently. Ethan could see the skepticism in some faces, but also a glimmer of hope in others. "I'm not here to make empty promises," Ethan said firmly. "I'm here to rebuild this company from the ground up, to make it a place where everyone is valued. I won't let this toxic culture continue." The meeting ended with polite applause, though Ethan knew there was still work to be done. Trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight, but this was the first step. As the weeks passed, the changes Ethan had promised began to take effect. Rachel's suspension sent a clear message to the rest of the leadership team. No one was above accountability. Meanwhile, Ryan Hale's investigation unearthed more evidence of Mark's manipulation and blackmail. The legal team was preparing to act, but for now, the focus was on rebuilding Horizon Tech from within. Ethan made it a priority to recognize the employees who had been overlooked for far too long, starting with Chloe and Jack. One afternoon, he called Chloe into his office, now restored to its usual pristine state. "I wanted to talk to you about your work on the quarterly reports," Ethan began. Chloe shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Is there a problem with them?" "No, quite the opposite," Ethan said, smiling. "Your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. I know you've been passed over for promotions in the past, but that changes today. I'm promoting you to Senior Director of Finance. You've more than earned it." Chloe's eyes widened in shock. I don't know what to say." "Thank you." Ethan nodded. "You've sacrificed a lot for this company, and it's time you're recognized for it." Later that day, Ethan found Jack in the IT department, hunched over a desk fixing yet another technical issue. "Jack," Ethan called, catching his attention. "I think it's time we had a conversation." Jack looked up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What's up?" "I've been watching how you handle things around here," Ethan said, leaning against the doorway. "Your patience, your leadership. It's time we recognize your talents. I'm offering you the role of head of IT. You'll have more say in decision-making and a team of your own to lead." Jack blinked in surprise. "Head of IT? Me?" Ethan smiled. "You've earned it." Jack's face broke into a grin. "I won't let you down." As the promotions were announced, Ethan could feel a shift in the company's energy. Chloe and Jack, both symbols of the kind of leaders Horizon Tech needed, became role models for others to follow. Employees began to feel that their hard work was being recognized, that there was hope for a better future. Despite the positive changes, the looming threat of Mark Dalton remained. Mark wasn't finished with Horizon Tech, and his final move came in the form of a leaked dossier to the press. The documents were carefully doctored, painting a picture of internal corruption at Horizon Tech and implicating Ethan in fraudulent practices. It was a direct attack on Ethan's leadership and his reputation. The media frenzy was immediate. Ethan was thrust into the spotlight his name dragged through the mud by headlines that screamed scandal. Investors began to pull out, and employees grew anxious. Horizon Tech's recovery was at risk of collapsing under the weight of the lies. But Ethan wasn't about to back down. He called for a press conference, determined to set the record straight. Standing behind a podium, cameras flashing, Ethan faced the crowd of reporters with calm determination. "I'm here today to address the false accusations that have been made against me and Horizon Tech," Ethan began. "These documents are fabricated. They were created by Mark Dalton, a former executive who was let go last year under suspicious circumstances." The reporters leaned in, scribbling furiously on their notepads. "Mr. Dalton has been orchestrating a campaign to sabotage this company from within, manipulating employees and spreading false information. We have evidence to prove this, and legal action is being taken as we speak." Ethan's words were measured but powerful. He explained the steps the company had taken to root out corruption, the changes that had been made to create a better work environment, and the legal case being built against Mark. When the press conference ended, the tide began to turn. Reporters dug deeper, uncovering Mark's history of manipulation, and the narrative shifted in Ethan's favor. Horizon Tech's reputation, though bruised, was on the road to recovery. The press conference had marked a critical turning point for Ethan and Horizon Tech. As the days passed, the media narrative surrounding the company began to shift. Investigative reporters followed the trail of evidence Ryan Hale had uncovered, and soon Mark Dalton's plot was fully exposed to the public. The fabricated documents, the sabotage, the blackmail, everything was laid bare. Mark's attempt to destroy Horizon Tech had backfired spectacularly. Though the legal case against Mark was still ongoing, the damage he had intended to inflict on Ethan's reputation was slowly being undone. Clients who had considered pulling their contracts began to reconsider, and investors who had wavered were now reaching out, expressing renewed confidence in the company's leadership. But for Ethan, the biggest victory wasn't in the public's perception. It was in the subtle changes he saw within the walls of Horizon Tech. The toxic atmosphere that had once plagued the company was beginning to dissipate. The changes he had implemented, merit-based promotions, anonymous feedback systems, and a renewed focus on employee well-being, were already having a positive impact. One afternoon, as he walked through the office, Ethan noticed something different. Employees were no longer rushing through their tasks with expressions of stress and frustration. There were more smiles, more collaboration, more energy. Chloe Reynolds, now Senior Director of Finance, was in a meeting room leading a discussion with her team, and the respect they showed her was palpable. Jack Sullivan, now Head of IT, was working on a major system upgrade with a group of engineers, his easygoing leadership style creating a sense of camaraderie. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt hope for the future of his company. As he passed by the break room, he saw Laura Brennan, the seasoned receptionist who had unknowingly helped him navigate his undercover role. She looked up from her desk and gave him a knowing smile. "Seems like things are finally turning around," she said. Ethan smiled back. "Thanks to people like you?" Laura waved him off with a laugh. "Don't give me too much credit. I'm just glad to see this place feeling alive again." Ethan continued down the hallway, his mind filled with the possibilities of what lay ahead. He had fought hard to turn the company around, but he knew there was still more to do. With the immediate crisis behind him, Ethan turned his attention to the future. He had learned a painful lesson about the importance of being connected to every level of the organization. He vowed never to let himself become so detached again. To ensure Horizon Tech continued on the right path, he needed to solidify the cultural changes he had initiated. He gathered his newly promoted senior leadership team for a meeting. Chloe, Jack, and other department heads who had proven their worth sat around the conference table, ready to discuss the company's future. The atmosphere was different from the tense, defensive meetings of the past. There was a sense of collaboration now, of shared purpose. "I want to talk about how we continue building on the changes we've made," Ethan began. "We've made progress, but it's not enough to implement new policies and call it a day. We need to create a culture where those policies are part of the fabric of this company." Chloe nodded. "I've been thinking about that too." It's one thing to have merit-based promotions, but we need to make sure we're nurturing talent at every level, not just rewarding it once it's already been proven. Jack chimed in. And we can't just rely on the whistleblower system to fix problems. It's a good start, but we need to be proactive in checking in with employees, making sure they feel valued before it gets to the point where they feel like they need to report something. Ethan smiled. He was proud of how these leaders were thinking, not just about their own departments, but about the well-being of the entire company. I agree, Ethan said. That's why I'm proposing a new mentorship program. We'll pair senior employees with junior staff to guide them, help them grow, and make sure their contributions are being recognized early. And I don't want this to be some formal corporate thing that feels like a chore. I want it to be genuine. The idea was met with enthusiasm. Chloe volunteered to lead the development of the program, while Jack suggested incorporating regular feedback sessions with the mentors and mentees to ensure the program was effective. Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. The company was in good hands with these leaders who genuinely cared about the people they worked with, not just the bottom line. As the mentorship program took shape and the cultural shifts became more deeply embedded in Horizon Tech, Ethan faced his final challenge, the court case against Mark Dalton. It was the culmination of months of turmoil and hard work, and while the company had begun to heal, the legal resolution was crucial to closing this dark chapter for good. The courtroom was packed with reporters, employees, and legal experts as the case unfolded. Ethan sat at the front, listening as the prosecution laid out the evidence Ryan Hale had meticulously gathered. Mark Dalton's actions were exposed in full: the blackmail, the sabotage, the deliberate attempts to ruin Horizon Tech's reputation. It was a damning case. Mark, who had once been a trusted executive, sat across the room, his face impassive. But Ethan could see the cracks in his stoic demeanor. Mark had underestimated Ethan's resolve and the strength of the people at Horizon Tech. After days of testimony, the judge delivered the verdict. Guilty. Mark was convicted of multiple counts of fraud and corporate sabotage. The relief in the room was palpable, and Ethan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. As he left the courthouse, flanked by reporters, Ethan remained calm and composed. The media swarmed him with questions, but his message was simple. Horizon Tech will continue to move forward. We've faced challenges, but we've come out stronger. I'm proud of what we've built and the people who are helping us build it. With the case behind him, Ethan could finally close the door on the turmoil that had nearly destroyed his company. But more importantly, he could look forward with confidence. With the court case resolved and Horizon Tech's reputation restored, Ethan focused on solidifying the internal changes he had implemented. He knew that building trust with his employees would take time, but the process had already begun. One afternoon, he sat down with Chloe and Jack to review the progress of the mentorship program. To his delight, the feedback had been overwhelmingly positive. Junior employees were thriving under the guidance of their mentors, and the sense of collaboration within the company had never been stronger. We've had some really great stories come out of this, Chloe said, showing Ethan some of the testimonials from employees. People are feeling more connected to their teams, and we've already identified a few rising stars who might have been overlooked before. Jack nodded in agreement. The technical teams are more engaged than ever. I've seen interns who were barely speaking up at meetings a few months ago now, leading small projects. It's been incredible to watch. Ethan smiled. This is exactly what I wanted. Horizon Tech was always supposed to be a place where everyone could thrive, not just the people at the top. As he spoke, Ethan realized how much he had changed as a leader. He had always been driven, always focused on success, but now he understood that true success wasn't just about numbers or accolades. It was about creating an environment where people felt empowered and valued. Months had passed since the verdict in the case against Mark Dalton, and Horizon Tech was thriving. The company that had once teetered on the edge of collapse was now stronger than ever, not just in terms of revenue, but in spirit. Ethan Walker, once a CEO distant from the daily realities of his company, had transformed his leadership and the company into something remarkable. Ethan stood in the new employee lounge, watching as teams from different departments chatted over coffee and laughed together. It was a sight he hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine camaraderie among employees who felt connected to the company and to each other. The mentorship program was flourishing. Employee engagement scores were at an all-time high, and new ideas were flowing through the company's veins like lifeblood. Chloe Reynolds, now the Senior Director of Finance, had taken the reins of several major projects, all of which had exceeded expectations. She was no longer the overlooked employee, working late nights with no recognition. She had become a pillar of leadership, respected by her peers and admired by the employees she mentored. In every meeting, she brought fresh ideas, and her department's productivity had surged under her guidance. Jack Sullivan, the once overlooked IT specialist, had embraced his new role as head of IT with the same quiet strength that had always set him apart. But now, he wasn't just fixing problems behind the scenes. He was leading a team, driving innovation, and helping shape the company's future. His calm demeanor and patient leadership style had earned him the trust and loyalty of his team, and his department had become one of the company's most efficient. As Ethan observed the buzz of activity around him, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It hadn't been easy, but he had learned invaluable lessons about leadership, humility, and the importance of staying connected to the people who made the company successful. Later that afternoon, Ethan called an all-hands meeting in the main auditorium. The energy in the room was palpable as employees filled the seats, eager to hear what their CEO had to say. As Ethan took the stage, the murmurs quieted and all eyes turned to him. "I want to start by thanking each and every one of you," Ethan began, his voice steady and sincere. "Over the past few months, we've been through a lot as a company. There were times when things seemed uncertain, when the challenges we faced felt insurmountable. But together, we've rebuilt Horizon Tech into something stronger and better than ever before." A ripple of applause moved through the audience, but Ethan wasn't finished. "This company has always been about more than just profits or products. It's about people, about creating an environment where everyone has the chance to grow, to contribute, and to thrive. And I'm proud to say that today we are closer to that vision than we've ever been." Ethan paused, letting his words sink in. He could see the faces of the employees who had weathered the storm alongside him. Those who had doubted, those who had fought to stay, and those who had helped lead the way. "We've learned some hard lessons, and we've made some tough decisions," Ethan continued. "But through it all, we've come out on the other side stronger, more united, and more committed to our values." The applause grew louder this time, and Ethan smiled. He could feel the shift in the room, the pride and enthusiasm that filled the space. It was a far cry from the uncertainty and fear that had once clouded the company's halls. "As we move forward, I want to make one thing clear. Horizon Tech is a place where everyone's voice matters. We will continue to focus on growth, on innovation, and on success. But we will never lose sight of what's most important, our people." The crowd erupted into applause, and Ethan stepped back from the podium, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. This was the culmination of his journey, his redemption as a leader, his promise to never again let the company drift away from its core values. Ethan had always known that success could be fleeting, that leadership required constant vigilance. But now, standing at the helm of a company that had not only survived a crisis, but emerged stronger, he understood the deeper meaning of leadership. A few weeks after the all-hands meeting, Ethan sat in his office, the sunlight streaming through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. The view of New York City that once made him feel powerful now filled him with a quieter sense of pride. This wasn't just his company. It was a collective achievement, a testament to the strength and resilience of the people who worked within its walls. He had spent years focused on the metrics of success, revenue growth, market share, industry accolades, but now he realized that the true measure of a company's worth was its people. And the true measure of a leader was the ability to see beyond the balance sheet, to nurture talent, and to create an environment where everyone felt valued. A knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts, and when he looked up, he saw Jack standing in the doorway. "Got a minute?" Jack asked, stepping inside. "Of course," Ethan replied, motioning for him to take a seat. Jack sat down, his expression thoughtful. "I just wanted to say thanks. For everything? For giving me a chance to step up. I never thought I'd be in a position like this, leading a team, making decisions that impact the whole company." Ethan smiled. "You earned it, Jack. I just gave you the opportunity you deserved." Jack nodded. "Still, I appreciate it, and I think a lot of people here feel the same way. Things are different now, in a good way. People are excited to come to work, and they're not just here for a paycheck. They believe in what we're doing." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. "That's all I ever wanted. For this to be a place where people are proud to work, where they feel like they're part of something bigger." Jack stood to leave but paused at the door. "You know, I think we're going to do some amazing things here, Ethan. This is just the beginning." As Jack left, Ethan leaned back in his chair, reflecting on those words. This was just the beginning. Horizon Tech had weathered its storm, and now it was poised for even greater success. But this time, the success wouldn't come at the expense of its people. That evening, as the office quieted down and the city lights flickered on outside his window, Ethan made one final decision. He drafted an internal memo announcing the creation of a new scholarship fund for employees' children, a way to invest in the future of the people who had given so much to Horizon Tech. It was a small gesture, but it was one that symbolized the company's commitment to its core values. When he finished, Ethan looked out at the skyline one last time. The city, which had once been a symbol of his ambition, now represented something more. A future built on trust, respect, and integrity. As he gathered his things and headed out of the office, Ethan felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had led him to this moment, a moment of true leadership and redemption. And as the elevator doors closed behind him, he knew that Horizon Tech's best days were still ahead. A year later, Horizon Tech was named one of the best places to work in the country, an accolade that meant more to Ethan than any revenue milestone or industry award. Employees from all levels of the company shared stories of their experiences, highlighting the transformation that had taken place. Chloe had become a key figure in the company's future, implementing forward-thinking financial strategies that helped Horizon Tech stay ahead of the competition. Jack's IT innovations had revolutionized the company's infrastructure, making it more efficient and resilient than ever before. But more than anything, the culture had changed. Horizon Tech was no longer a company that thrived on hierarchy and favoritism. It was a place where everyone's contributions were valued, where hard work was recognized, and where people felt connected to a shared vision. And at the center of it all was Ethan Walker, a leader who had fallen, but who had risen again, stronger, wiser, and more committed than ever to leading with integrity and heart. As Ethan looked out over the bustling office floor, filled with laughter, collaboration, and innovation, he knew that this was his legacy, a company built not just on success, but on the values that truly mattered. Horizon Tech's future was bright, and for Ethan, that was the greatest victory of all. Enjoyed this journey? If you love stories about leadership, resilience, and personal growth, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned for more compelling narratives that inspire, uplift, and show the power of transformation. Subscribe now to never miss an episode.